Overtired. So tired. Overtired.
Hi, everybody. This is the Overtired podcast. I am Jeff Severance Guntzel, and I am here with my co-hosts, Brett and Christina. Hi.
Hey.
And we have an
Hello.
awesome guest today, one of our favorites to have on, Bryan Guffey. Hello, Bryan.
Hello. How is
good.
everybody?
That's good.
We're so
Hello.
glad to have you back.
I'm so glad to be back.
I'm glad to be here with
wonderful
you
be
because
here.
I missed you. I missed you last time.
Yeah,
So.
it's really great. Yeah, that we all get to be here together. I've been bugging Brett a lot, Jeff, being like, I want to be on a podcast with Jeff. I want to be on a podcast with Jeff. His brain.
Shucks.
I love his brain.
I hope it's worth it.
I mean, listen, your hair already does it for me. Like, I'm so here for your hair.
Oh man, I love my hair.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's just very it's very on par with it fits you.
Here's why I love my hair, because it sounds like a fucking weird thing to say, but I haven't had to put a comb through it since I don't know what, because at some point I landed on the mad professor hair and I don't have to maintain it, but I like a little swoosh. There's a lot about me I don't love, but I like my hair.
You both have a bit of a Don King thing going on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is all hiding behind them.
Brian.
Well, yeah, Brian just made it Don King.
Brian, who is actually black, can pull it off better.
Brian, who is actually becoming Don King before us right now. I wish you could see it.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is very much who played Don King in the HBO movie, because you're totally giving those vibes right now.
Who did
No,
Don King?
there was an HBO movie. Was it Idris Elba?
It was not.
I'm just kidding. Of course.
Did anybody else? I'm gonna be such a dude.
in the HBO not in Ali then.
No, it was Don King only in America. It was a 1997 film directed by John Hertzfeld and written by Cary Salem.
It was Ving Rhames.
Yeah, fuck yeah. That was who I thought it was. No, okay, but I'm sorry. That's who I thought it was, and I was like, I'm gonna say that, and I'm gonna be wrong.
That's so awesome.
Good job.
I'd love to watch that. I love Ving Rhames.
Yeah, he's the best. Baby Boy, R.I.P. John Singleton, but genuinely, that film gets slept on, and that's one of the best films.
Love John Singleton.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Right? Isn't and Ving Rhames is in. He's the one who's in. He is. Yeah, he's the one that's in every Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise. Who's best friends.
Yes, he's the smart one. He's the one. He's like, no, chill, dude. What are you doing?
So
That's
good.
awesome. Oh, television.
Bernie Mac was in this. This is
Bernie Mac.
Oh, Bernie Mac.
Did anybody follow the Cat Williams thing?
Yeah. Oh my God.
God, that was a blast.
That's the best 3 hours of my life.
And now on TikTok, my algorithm is so tweaked to Cat Williams because I looked at every response and watched every clip 3 times that now it's all Cat Williams and monkeys in my TikTok feed. Baby monkeys specifically.
So
that's a really hilarious pairing. I just want to point out.
No,
and then we'll move on from that.
It's yin and yang,
It is. Just for background for anybody who wants to go down this rabbit hole, because it is delightful. The comedian Cat Williams, who has had problems, but I used to very much enjoy his stand-up specials, does an absolutely unhinged podcast with who is it with? It's with Shannon Sharp, right?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, all I see is Cat Williams in my head.
And it's over 3 hours long, and it's Saturday Night Live even parodied it, and he makes the most unhinged declarations about all the people he's ever had beef with, and just makes these claims that are just provably false. That's the most unhinged, delightful, insane interview you'll ever watch, and then all these people fact checked him on everything he said, and it's
and the problem is if anybody else had done that kind of interview, I would have been ugh, gross, but it is irresistible.
It's so good.
The extent to which Cat Williams is I'm not getting up from this chair, I'm not apologizing, I'm just gonna go deeper and deeper.
And I think that's partially because Cat Williams over the past couple of years has sort of been a truth teller in certain areas about saying things calling out Dave Chappelle and some other things.
Oh
yeah.
And so I think people were oh, we don't expect this wildness from Cat Williams now, but here it is again. He's back.
Right. He's back. He's he'd had some incident a number of years ago. I can't remember what it was, when he was having some problems that was seriously deranged. But yeah, then he was like speaking truth to power, and you're like, okay, maybe he's doing well, okay, again. And you see this interview, and you're like,
nope.
This is great. But yeah, Shannon Sharp was the one who did the interview.
You're talking about the NFL Shannon Sharp.
Yes, and
that's even more hilarious. Shannon Sharp has a podcast.
Watching him handle that was incredible.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, Shannon Sharp not only does he have a podcast, he has a very successful ESPN show, and he used to have a show with he was on with Skip Bayless on his a Fox Sports show, and then they had a very, very bitter breakup, and now Shannon Sharp has a very popular like ESPN show, but apparently it's received 54 million views so far.
And the last thing, I mean, the one thing I want to say about it that was amazing about watching Shannon Sharp is like, here Cat Williams is essentially firing a machine gun just over his shoulder. And you could see him being like, I am not moving into the target. Like, I have to figure out how to both like keep my own integrity in the midst of this and not end up in the line of fire somehow, either now or afterwards.
All right. Is it okay if I rein this in now?
Yeah.
Yes,
because we decided this week to do a new format, maybe just this week only, but we'll see how it goes, where we're going to start the show with gratitude, which is usually the final segment on the show where everyone talks about one favorite piece of software or developer for the week. I have mine picked out. Are you prepared for this early onslaught of gratitude? Yeah. Jeff,
are you suggesting that sometimes we pick our gratitude in the course of recording?
I absolutely do. Yes.
I absolutely do as well. But no, I got one. Wait, we didn't do one last episode, right?
Nope, we didn't. We skipped it because
it ended up essentially being ChatGPT.
And it was still 2 hours long.
Right. No. Okay. Yeah. No. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't share the one that I had last week for this week. So great.
I love Brad being like, it was still 2 hours long, and I'm like, that's what I loved about it. Even though I understand from like the perspective of being in it how hard it can be to go 2 hours because your brain goes.
Yep, for sure,
definitely.
All right,
definitely.
Jeff, kick us off.
I will kick us off, but first I'm going to suggest a slight change to our tagline, which could be Overtired, Tech, Mental Health, and Cat Williams. Just putting it out there. I mean, it's just an option is all.
And honestly, this podcast, Cat Williams could also be, Brett has a new cat named Williams.
Yeah, it could be.
That's good. I like that.
I like that.
Cat with a K, though.
I have a cat named Morris. It would fit.
Perfect. Oh, now we've got an agency going.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Well done.
Okay, so mine is actually something that Alex Cox recommended on the first episode of the year in answer to my gratitude then, which was Datum, which is a great app for sort of just tracking whatever it is you want to track. And they had recommended at the time Chronicling, an app by the developer Rebecca Owen. And the first thing I want to say about this app, and then I'll talk about the functionality in a second, but it is so incredible to me when you start using an app. It's beautiful. The UI is intuitive. It has just the right kind of constraint, right? Like it does some of the things you need it to do right away when you go looking in the settings, but then it doesn't give a person like me too much opportunity to just fiddle and not actually utilize the app. And it's in regular development and updates, and meaningful features are added. And it's just a wonderful app. It's chronicling with a Ling and not. It's missing. Let's just say it's missing a vowel. That's all I'm going to say. So you go on that little goose chase. But anyway, so it's one of these apps that allows you to say, I want to press a button every time I actually call my father. I want to press a button every time I get an oil change. I want to press a button every time I take a shower. In my case, I was joking with Alex about that on Mastodon, but it's not really a joke. Like it's a good indicator of mental health, right? And Rebecca in this app has made that not only very easy to do, but also very beautiful. And there's also just kind of the cool thing is you can choose the scope of time in which you're tracking these things. Is it inside of a week, inside of a month, inside of a year? And then next to each thing, each item on the home screen is just a little chart that just kind of shows a little line for each time inside of a week or a month or a year that you did this thing. and then also tells you how many days it's been since you did the thing. So I happen to know that it's been 37 days since we trimmed our cat's nails. And it's been 13 days since I got a haircut. And what I love about it is it's not at least the way it allows you to use it, not so much for like habit building. Like I think a lot of those apps, I said this when we were talking to Alex about this kind of app, is like a lot of those apps are designed in a way that makes sort of a judgment call. Like you're supposed to decide what you're supposed to do, and then you're rewarded with haptics and confetti every time you do it, right? Which feels great.
It's prescriptive versus descriptive.
Oh, nice. And what I literally want is to be like, when's the last time I hung out with a friend in person? When's the last time we went out to a restaurant? Like, I actually want to see that stuff, not because I feel bad when I see it, but it helps me a little bit. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I probably should get a haircut or whatever it is, you know? Haircut's a terrible example. I have so many things I'm tracking in there, but a lot of them are about relationships and just like well-being, like things that are sort of good indicators.
Yeah.
It does in some cases encourage me to actually do a thing. Like if I see it's been X number of days since, you know, I took a long walk or something, I'll be like, oh, I should do that. But it doesn't, I don't know what it is. It's the design or it's the overall vibe, but it doesn't in any way inspire guilt. It's just like, well, I just want to know, you know,
the apps like this that have always worked for me are the ones that are descriptive, that just give me the data and let me make my own kind of judgments. And okay, this worked in this way. I should keep doing this. So I'm going to make, you know, a judgment call based on their description of what I have done. The ones that are prescriptive, the ones that are like, here's my goal. Now I'm going to hold myself to this New Year's resolution kind of idea.
Yeah.
Where I'll just feel guilty when I once again fail to keep them.
Mm-hmm.
I can appreciate that. By the way, that is how you spell chronicling. It's not missing a vowel.
I wish I could say edit that out, but that's not what we're gonna do.
Perfect.
I don't know. That's funny. Well, okay, fine. I didn't finish high school. I mean, I work alongside PhDs. You know, like I've seen their spelling errors.
Absolutely, spelling is not an indication.
No, like I need the red line. You know, I need the red line. Like it's fine to show me what's wrong. All right, sorry, Rebecca. You're also brilliant because you know how chronicling is spelled. I mean, that's incredible. You know how like it's a thing to just remove. Here's the thing. I'm not defensive. I'm a little embarrassed, but like the thing about assuming that there was a vowel missing is that that's what all apps are missing.
Sure. And
so I saw that and I'm like, chronicling. What an interesting way of spelling
I
that.
didn't look this up. I'm going for my own innate sense of spelling. So it could turn out in retrospect, after this episode is out, that someone like Harold comes along and says, actually, it's chronicling.
Hi, Harold.
And I was totally wrong. So last week I called Harold a pedant
Gotta ask Harold.
And
I love that you said pedant. Are we getting into like
he
nope,
laughed out
ahead.
loud. He told me it was fine. I told him I was afraid that came across as mean, but he was okay with it. But back to chronicling. This looks good.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like certainly, something that has to be true for me is that you can export your data, right? So you can also export your data. You can pull it into something else you want. And the last thing I'll say about it is like that's a good sign. Maybe it's as much about me as anything, but like it's almost the end of January, and I started it at the beginning, and I'm still keeping stuff filled on it, which is like that's got to be
impressive.
something to say about the app. So anyway, that's my thing.
Love it.
Nice. All right.
Nice,
Christina.
All right, so my pick is the new version of Prompt 3 from Panic. You know, I don't know. So, and it's interesting. This is a universal app now, so it works on Mac as well as iOS. It is moved to a subscription model. So, how you feel about that? Or I think you can buy it one time, and the one-time price is a little bit high. I'm not going to lie. I think it's probably more than I would spend. I'm going to do the subscription for a year, mostly to support Panic and to see how much I like it. There are a bunch of, at this point, I think, really good SSH clients for iOS. There's ISH, which is available both from a test flight and it's in the App Store. There's La Termina from
that's one I've been
Miguel
using.
de Queza, which I really like a lot. And then there's the things like specifically for Mosh and whatnot. But I love the team at Panic. This had been an app, Panic Prompt 2. Maybe I'm misremembering this, but I thought I remembered at one point that they'd kind of put it in maintenance mode or basically killed it. And so I was glad to see this revived. And so and I do have to say, like, the intro video and stuff is really good. Again, it's interesting that it has the Mac client. I don't know how necessary that is when you have Terminal, just being completely honest. But and certainly this is not as good of a terminal emulator as iTerm. It's just not. But I do think that this is a good thing for Mac, or not for Mac, for iOS. And I'm not mad. It now does have Mosh support. You can it has a clips feature, so you can have like your most frequently used commands and text snippets right there. That I think is actually pretty useful. And then of course it works with Panic Sync, which I like a lot. Usually what I use these sorts of things for are for like using for jump boxes. That's mostly what I use the iOS types of clients for. But anyway, I this came out, I think it had come out last week when we were talking, like I was going to make it my pick. It had just come out. I've been playing with it a little bit, and I like it so far. Like I said, I don't know if this is going to be something I remain subscribed to all the time, but I'm happy to see more apps like this, and always happy to see Panic have apps. So
I gotta look back into Mosh. Like I've been using Tmux sessions, and like all of my config files, when I SSH into a remote host, it always loads up a Tmux with my last session. So before I disconnect from an SSH host, I just exit out of Tmux and then disconnect. And that has given me really stable SSH sessions. But I remember seeing Mosh and thinking, oh, that might be a great answer, and then forgetting about it. So
same. And so, and I do remember from like the Prompt 2 days that was always like a much requested feature.
Sure.
And so I was glad to see that exist. I do have to say I do like the website that they've created for prompts.
It's good.
The aesthetic. Yeah,
Beautiful.
the aesthetic is really good, and the music, when you install it, if you go through like the trial or whatever, is really good. Also, the video and stuff that they created, I think Krista still makes all their videos, is like just fire. So, there are, at this point, it's a different landscape than when Prompt 2 came out. There are a lot of good options for iOS, but I'm still gonna make this my gratitude.
I like on their website.
The sport again.
Yeah, right.
God. Why did they cancel that? I don't remember.
I think at the time it was too hard to make money off of it, and also like Apple
give
kind
it
of
away
fucked
for
them.
free.
Well, they tried, and then trying to do kind of like IAP stuff. I think what was hard at the time, it would be different now, but at the time, this was right when Apple switched the connector type. And so the AV connector from the 30 pin could let you do things that you couldn't do from Lightning for a long time. And I think that kind of fucked them. And then there were also problems where they had with like certain companies, like if you wanted to put in like API keys and other sorts of things, like Apple really limited what you could do and how you could customize those boards. Like, it's weird. Like, this is a product that I honestly do think you're dead on, Brett. Like, I think that you could revive this now and you could make it work. Honestly, web technology has gotten good enough that you could just do, some certain calls, like without having to do things the way they did them now. Like, you could probably build it out even more as a web thing. But
Dear Cable, are you listening?
Yeah, bring it back.
There's in the like kind of video that's running on the computer on the website, it busts out to a Matrix terminal for a second.
I love that. Yeah.
You can install a Matrix app through Brew.
Yeah,
like,
I
have an old bash script that uses tput and a random kernel to put kanji characters on the screen. But it's super random and doesn't create those nice falling columns. that you get from whatever's on Homebrew. I think it's written in Rust.
Yeah, it is. I think so. And then there's also there's a way that you can get like the sneakers effect.
Yeah.
That's also on GitHub somewhere. I'll find that because I made that like a pick of the
drop
week.
that in the show notes.
Yeah, I will.
Fun.
Yeah.
Amazing.
All right, Bryan, what you got?
Okay, so it was very difficult. I'm going to do two. And the first one, I'm just going to go super basic.
I'll allow it.
I'm going to do basic white girl, and it is the Starbucks app.
Oh, fuck yeah. Great app.
It's such a good app. It is such a good app, and they just added live activities for your pickups. If you order,
wait, what's that mean? Live
orders.
Activities?
Yeah, it comes up on the lock screen, and it's an updating, so it tells you like when your order's ready and it's done being made.
Awesome.
And like it's so great. And I recently I hadn't even realized that they had added like Siri shortcut support. So when you search for Starbucks, you can just press to like order your regulars, and it'll ask you like, hey, is this what you're getting? And then you can tell it yes, and then it's like, okay, so we have this much money on your card, and we're going to charge it. And it just walks through a shortcut and does the whole thing. You don't even have to open the app to order stuff. I use this. I mean, it's one of my most used apps. Like I use that app every single day, almost more than Nathan thinks I should. And it's such a good app. It almost is like there's almost never any issues with it, even though they're running a massive web backend. It's almost always up and running.
Yep.
Like it's just rock solid. And so I really love the Starbucks app.
To your point about like how long that has been, like it's been an app that's been around for a really long time, and I have to give I think the Starbucks team immense credit that they have from the very beginning. I remember when that app launched, and it was Apple Pay didn't exist, Apple Wallet didn't exist, and they were already kind of creating a way where you could pay using kind of like the kind of a predecessor of QR codes, and we're really kind of getting into that space where you could make it easy to use. Like they had their own kind of terminals and whatnot. And I have to say, like, of all the various commerce apps, most companies have stopped making native apps, and because it just kind of doesn't make sense. I mean, if they have them, they're like little more than wrappers. But like the Starbucks team has continued to work really hard on that app. And you're right, like for the fact that it is a massive web service on the back end, it's really performant and it works really well. But also, I didn't realize that they'd added the live activities feature either, but like that's really great. And they're always, I think, like a really good iOS citizen. That's all I was going to say.
What do you usually order at Starbucks?
Oh my.
when Siri suggests an order, what does Siri know you want?
I normally order, these days I order a like basically a decaf iced coffee. So, which is complex sometimes because of what they have on. They don't make decaf iced coffee, so you have to like order. What I realized actually was that I was not ordering that for a long time, and I was just ordering an iced coffee with decaf espresso shots in it. I had no idea, which is now what I just do. Because I was supposed to not be drinking caffeine because I was on Vyvanse, but surprise, my blood pressure's been stable. So, I mean, it's usually an iced coffee with far too much sugar and like far too many caramel syrup shots, and caramel sauce shots, and then stevia, as if that's going to fix the problem of all the caramel sauce I put in. And then also,
right,
yeah, and then also the Impossible Breakfast Sandwich. I love the Impossible Breakfast Sandwich.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. Like for me, we have Starbucks here in Little Old Winona, but they don't make great espresso. I make better espresso at home, way cheaper, and I've never figured out like what the draw of like intelligent adults is to Starbucks.
I don't want to do things.
I'd be curious. I'm just curious. Like I know that a lot of smart people go to Starbucks that could afford Starbucks that could afford their own coffee setups and like cook their own breakfast. But is it a time thing? Does it just save time?
Well, food, I mean, their hot food their sandwiches are actually like pretty banger. And so, and also their pastries, like, during the like the gingerbread loaf during the holidays.
It's good.
I don't know what they put in the icing on their things, but it's so amazing.
It's crack.
It is. I'm really sad that they discontinued the Thanksgiving turkey sandwich that they used to have. That was also the greatest thing in the world.
Oh yeah, that was like the Monica sandwich, right? Like I never had it,
absolutely.
but I never had it, but that's what it looked like.
It was so good. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's mostly I love seeing the baristas and saying hello, even if it's just through the drive-through. So there's that part. And I used to spend a lot of time at the Starbucks in Columbus when I lived there.
Yeah,
and
so there's a personal connection. That makes sense. Like,
and it's also that I don't have to make, like, I forget to brew some cold brew, and so I have to have it in the morning.
Oh, I would never forget that. There's a bar here in town that has a big ceramic pizza oven, and I believe they opened with the intention of being a high-end bar, but also became a pizza place in the process.
Oh, cool.
And they made a special pizza around Christmas that was essentially just a Neapolitan pizza. And it was, in my opinion, their best pizza. And then it ended. Christmas ended, and they stopped serving it. So, like, I went back to the kitchen. I had a hostess who had a boyfriend who worked in the kitchen, and she was my proxy to say, how can I continue ordering this year round? And we worked out a deal, like, here's the code word, here's what you say, because it's simple ingredients. It's stuff they always have on hand. It's just off menu. And I worked it out. And that's why I would go out to a pizza place rather than make my own pizza, is that kind of like ability to order off menu, that the ability to have some kind of personal connection. And I just assumed that you would never have that at Starbucks.
Well, weirdly, so for food, probably not so much because most of it is prepackaged and or pre-made. But like for the drinks, that is like honestly the whole thing is that it's off menu. Like you can get it customized however you want, and that's why I think they make so much money. Now I live in Seattle
because you pay like 3 times as much for your off menu. Like when you start to customize the additional shots and everything, the price goes up.
So expensive. Additional pumps, which is why like they had to like there was a whole bunch of drama. I remember, God, this was so long ago, but I remember going down this rabbit hole because I loved the drama of people who would like save up coupons and things from their Starbucks stars and like really use it to get like the most ridiculous drink orders they could. Like they would basically find a way to get like $13 drinks. I'm not even joking. With like their coupons, and so Starbucks had to kind of like cut down on how much they were giving out the bonus points and whatnot. I live in Seattle where there are a ton of Starbucks, and we have a thing called the Starbucks Reserve, and there aren't many of them in the world, but there is one literally like 3 blocks from my house. And they have like the most expensive type of coffee machines, and they do like really high end types of brewing and whatnot.
I bet they have clovers.
Oh, that they do. They do. And it's insane. And like, and that's a good place to go. We don't have Dunkin', and that I'm not going to lie. Like I grew up my entire life having access to Dunkin' at all times. And there are no Dunkins in the state of Washington because of the Starbucks mafia. And so, because Starbucks started in Seattle.
That sounds like a really lame reading group name.
It really does.
like a book club.
Yeah,
we're the Starbucks Mafia.
Oh God, you know that some bitches in Bellevue, like some moms group have fucking done that, or like Woodinville, all the fucking wine moms.
I bet one of them has a food blog. Hubby's away this week.
There was a coffee house I think it was in St. Paul, and their claim to fame was that they had bought 3 Clover machines when they opened, which are like, I think at the time, $20,000 espresso machines.
Yep.
And almost every Starbucks has a Clover now.
Yeah. This place had a small sign, and their windows were always steamed. Like you could never see inside the place, and you could walk by it and never have any idea it existed. But I would go
the boxing gym in my neighborhood.
I would go there just for their Clover machines. That was worthwhile to me. So if every Starbucks has a Clover, I might need to check it out again.
Yeah. So if you all remember, that was my basic one. So the other one is this app called Ahead. And Ahead is it's an emotions coach app. So this is a great lead into Mental Health Corner.
Yeah, it is.
So it's science-backed, started by, I think, I forget, they're in another country, because I met with one of the co-founders just the other day. But I struggle a lot with anger, actually. And I didn't realize it was anger, but like underneath all of the defensiveness and all this other stuff, it's just anger. And Ahead has been really helpful in teaching me how to be less angry, how to get less defensive, how to reframe the angry thoughts. And it takes you through little bite-sized lessons. It has you like draw little things on the screen to like commit to doing a thing. And then it gives you the opportunity to like record when you got angry or when you had an angry situation, and like how it made you feel and like what the underlying feelings were. And so then over time you start to be able to see like, oh, most of my angry moments come from feeling like misunderstood. And then it gives you tactics on like how to address it. Like if you're about to get angry in a situation, before you do, like play out the situation in advance so that you can sort of like pre-feel the regret. Or like imagine this as a comedy. Like imagine the situation that you're about to get angry at as a comedy, or as a kid would see it, and it's really funny. Then, like sometimes when I get into a big argument with Nathan about nothing, like it's just a very hilarious if you're on the outside. And it is really, really the first thing that really helped me get my defensiveness under control. And so I'm just like really a big fan of it. They have, I think, a 7-day free trial. Then they will charge you, I think, $60 a year. But like I happily paid it, and I don't normally pay
all right,
apps like that. Yeah,
that's awesome. Ahead.
Yeah, I found the link. It was hard to track down, but the link's in the show notes. When apps give themselves names that are just words in the English language,
I know,
and leave all the vowels in.
For example, marked. It makes it hard to track them down, but NV Ultra is easy to find. Anyway, my pick for this week is Loopback from Rogue Amoeba. I honestly could pick all of Rogue Amoeba's apps, but specifically Loopback just fascinates me. Rogue Amoeba does black magic, and you know this because every time there's an OS update, all their stuff breaks. And the fact that they within 2 weeks of 2 weeks before a new OS becomes public, they will come out with new versions of their apps, and they have never failed to get their apps working with a new OS. But the fact that they break every time means they are doing some deep black magic. And what fascinates me about Loopback is the tagline is cable-free audio routing for Mac. And it lets you make these virtual audio devices that can combine different inputs, different outputs, input from different apps, pipe them to here, pipe them to there, and create like a literal audio device that you can select from your input or output menu. And Loopback doesn't have to be running anymore once it creates the device. So, for example, I have a complete audio 6 that has 6 audio inputs. And one of those inputs is from the Echo in my office. And that goes into the 3-4 RCA inputs in my complete audio 6. I can then combine that output into almost like a pass-through for all of the other audio that comes out of my system. So I can patch my Echo and the output from my Echo, which I often use to play Spotify. I can patch that in as if it's just coming from my system. And I don't even have to select a special audio device. It just acts as a pass-through device. And with this device that has 6 different inputs and my Wave XLR and my Solo 2, like I can basically pipe in my case, 8 different inputs to specific places and create single devices that can be used throughout any application. I don't have to be like Audio Hijack does a great job of doing this stuff internally as long as you're running Audio Hijack. But this brings that ability to pipe all your inputs to outputs and create literal OS specific like audio inputs and outputs. And I love it.
Yeah, and what's great is that because of how it works, like it'll show up in all of your other apps as like a thing that you can choose.
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't have to worry about like if Zoom or Teams is going to usually be the culprit here. Let's be completely honest. Or something else, or something in a web browser. Like you don't have to worry about them supporting some of the features that they may not support. You could just choose the group that you've chosen in loopback, and it'll just act like any other sound source.
Another stupid but obvious use for it is you can create a virtual device so I can take my complete audio's 6 inputs, 2 outputs. I can create a virtual device that acts with that as a pass through and just outputs it directly the way it was, but by using that device, instead of selecting the complete audio as my output, I now suddenly have volume and mute controls that you wouldn't have on an external device like that normally. So like the mute button on any media keyboard, or if you assign it to, your hackable keyboard, your mute button will suddenly work with an audio device that normally wouldn't allow you to mute it. It's not a cheap app. It's like $100 for this app, but honestly, I consider it worth it.
Yeah, if you don't need something quite as happy as big as Loopback, you might be okay with Sound Source, which can do some of that.
This is great.
Sound Source is great.
And if you want to go open source, you could find Soundflower. I don't know if it works anymore, but yeah, like all of these kind of have that kind of patch mentality. Sound Source itself it'll do the mute for an external device, and it will do I can't remember what they call it, super something, but it will allow you to boost volume on devices that at max volume aren't loud enough. It'll allow you to like 120% your volume. Sound Source is also from Rogue Amoeba, and I'll be doing a giveaway on that later this year on BrettTrepstra.com. So sign up for the mailing list, find out all about it. I didn't convince them to give away Loopback though.
What I will say for people, if you're interested in some of the Rogue Amoeba apps, like if you think you would get some use out of them, consider getting their ultimate podcast bundle, which will basically give you all the apps at once. And like that, it'll end up coming in cheaper. And the apps are like, they wait a number of years between updates. So like I made that outlay, a number of years ago, and I was like, this has paid off for me. But yeah.
Have you ever used Farrago or whatever, their soundboard app?
I have, but it like not like I thought that I would use it more. And I think that just whatever my workflow was at the time, I didn't. And now at this point, I feel like the apps that I use where that could be useful, like they have their own built-in soundboards. So it's cool. Again, like what's great about all the Rogue Amoeba stuff is that like it works independently of what app or program you're in. And they are one of the only companies that I trust, including Apple, to be very, very clear, to like actually understand how the Apple audio APIs work. And
maybe even better than Apple.
Yeah. Oh, I think they absolutely understand better than Apple, which is why I was so mad about the way that you have to install some of their stuff on various
Is that
Macs
still
now.
true? Like, you mean with the rebooting and or like disabling? There was a whole 3-step process that involved multiple reboots, and
they make it very difficult for you to install their app. Well,
I haven't had to do that recently.
They just announced that they've been working with Apple, and then I think in the latest OS update, it's been changed now that you don't even have to like put in your password in some cases.
Oh.
Yeah, I think I heard about this on Upgrade, I think.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Yeah, I would hope that's gotten better, because that was some bullshit.
No, it was complete bullshit. Yeah, I didn't know, because I haven't had to because usually it was a one-time thing. So once you got it installed, you didn't have to do it again. But I haven't gone through the process in a long time, and so
Yeah,
I
they
don't
said
know
here.
about that. But yeah, if they've gotten rid of that, that's even better.
Or they're about to. Maybe they shipped it. So they released this in their 2024 status report by Paul on January 9th. And I think what happened was then there was the release of 12.3, is it? Or 14.3.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a note that there was like a new permission in 14.3, and Jason put the two together that he thinks that what happened is, so Audio Hijack, basically what Amoeba's done here is that they're going to be shipping updates that Airfoil, Audio Hijack, and Piezo will feature an installer-free setup that won't even need your administrator password, and Loopback and SoundSource will use a new audio capture plugin called ARK, A-R-K, that won't require a single system restart. So I'm not sure, maybe it's out completely, but Jason figured that probably they've been working with Apple, and Apple has made some changes around security in terms of added a new category.
Okay, so there's like a new entitlement or something.
Setting. Exactly. Yep. And I think that's what's going to address the issue.
Oh, well, that's great.
Oh yeah, screens and system audio recording, it's now called. So they added, there's a system audio recording only option now in 14.3.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Can I nerd out for just 30 seconds before we get to Mental Health Corner?
Please.
As if nerding out isn't what's been happening
right. So
before.
I got a request from a reader of my blog that he wanted to figure out when his VPN connection was disconnected, and at that point kill a QTorrent. And so I had to look into how, and I ended up diffing ifconfig output when the VPN was connected versus when it was disconnected, and found out there was a new network interface that showed up in ifconfig when it was connected. So then I could just run ifconfig through a grep to see if that interface was present, and then I would immediately know if the VPN was connected, and put that on a 1 second loop and just have it run until the VPN is no longer detected, and then pass through to a kill all command. So it's like a 7-line script that can actually kill an app when your VPN connection terminates. It was fun. I'll probably post it on his blog, but I'm asking him for permission to share the script, not like his personal details or anything, but yeah, that's the kind of service. Oh, and it was weird because I sent him like an example, just like an outline of like how I thought it could work. And he came back and he's like, the parentheses don't work. I'm like, the parentheses were the parts where you were supposed to insert the working commands. And and I realized in the process that he was actually very new to shell scripting.
That sounds a little bit like helping me, Brett.
Right, except even more intense. I sent him a 2-screen long email this morning detailing why it worked and how, and explaining the basics of shell scripting. And that right there is the kind of service I provide.
That is, that's very fucking Brett, and God bless you. God's bless you.
Hey, I learned it the same way. I learned it from people who were like, whether it's on Usenet or Reddit or in private forums, like
Stack Exchange.
You learn this shit from people that can tell you what you're doing wrong and how it should work. And if you don't give back, you're not like that cycle has to perpetuate. Like,
is that like when you download torrents but you don't seed them?
Yes.
Yes.
Or when you don't reciprocate head, like that's honestly like
absolutely, that's the good one.
It's all. I think it all falls under the heading of unrequited.
Yes.
Perhaps.
Yes. Dating back to Shakespearean works. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, you want to get into a mental health corner?
Yeah.
Sure.
I just thought of a good pun though for what we were just talking about. Don't be a Regex princess.
Ooh, that's good.
Is that the show title?
Maybe that should be. Don't be a Regex princess. I like that.
Regex Princess with Bryan Guffey.
Amazing.
Do we have any volunteers for first mental health corner?
We always give the guest the option.
Yeah.
My mental health is better. It's been a difficult few months. Like my partner Nathan and I have been coming out of like a difficult stretch. I talked about like my defensiveness and like just I can't imagine what it's like to be a neurotypical, live with a neurodivergent person who also like constantly wants to make everything your fault because they have a lot of their own like trauma. Brett talking about you're talking about complex PTSD and really have had that revelation with my therapist and psychiatrist as well, and just how much one of the things that I continue to sort of be amazed by is how much everything can come back to the trauma that you've experienced and how that shapes the way that your brain ends up working.
Mm-hmm.
That again, like ADHD and autism and all of these things can be both downstream of the trauma that you've experienced because it's shaped your brain in different ways, but also it can exacerbate those things. And the other thing that I've been sort of dealing with a lot is just recognizing how often people will fuck you up without having anything but the best of intentions. and how you sort of have to learn to reconcile that without needing to have them take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
What did Merlin said last week? They're doing the best they can, and that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I listened to that episode and it was really weird, like having the super long mental health corners the last couple of times. Plus that, I was like, wow, this is all just sort of coming together at the right time. And so it's, also work has just been absolutely like just pouring water over top of you, like waterboarding levels of like overwhelming. And so I've really I was in a meeting earlier this week with my boss and she was like, she is also, I'm pretty sure, neurodivergent and like it is learning to be a better manager still and is like a very good engineer, but that means that like sometimes she gets really worked up about things, and like when your boss gets worked up about things, like then you get worked up about things. And there was a moment in which I was just like, I am screaming inside right now. Ooh. Can we just stop for a moment? Because like I cannot take any more information being thrown at me and be asked to like operate.
Yeah.
And it's just been a really intense period, and I'm like trying to get out of the house more and do more things. I was down in LA for the weekend. My mom was in town, saw my brother, my sister-in-law, and my nephew, and went out to eat at a restaurant that was mostly outdoors. If you're in LA, go to the Hatchet Hall. It's a phenomenal restaurant. But it's just been like really intense and overwhelming, and just like it's one of those things where you're like, oh, does it ever get like really can I get life to be boring again? I feel like we've all been going through that for years, right? But now but there was a period when like COVID was happening and I was like, well, my life is really boring inside of COVID and I love it.
Yeah.
I was at home doing nothing, like same thing every day. Had the same stuff delivered every 2 weeks for groceries. It was so awesome. And now people want me to do things again. And now all of the stuff that I thought I had figured out, but mostly I was just hiding in my house, which is like fine, except that like my partner does not have the capability to give me the amount of social interaction that I need. now it's just like all of the other stuff is coming on top of it, and COVID is still going on to some degree. Like so it's just like very, very exhausting right now.
I relate to this inclination to not do anything or to have things be the same every day. That is where I feel the most comfortable. But in the times I am kind of forced or, by circumstance, I end up doing things outside of my comfort zone. I usually end up feeling a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. Right. Do you find like being forced to do things to actually be maybe good?
Yes, I do. Like it is. The struggle is that the amount of time that's available, right? Sure. Like doing the other things is great, but like I'm not yet getting to choose to not do other things.
Yeah.
So there's just not enough time at all at the moment. And it doesn't, I love them. They are like one of the greatest joys of my life, but having 9 dogs is, and particularly like the process of dog training right now, which is 2 nights a week for like 3 hours each night.
Yeah, that sounds insane.
It's just like so much. It's so much fun.
Hold on, pause, mental health corner.
You didn't know.
9 dogs? Are you Catholic?
No.
That's insane. I love it.
We had
range of sizes, or are they all one breed?
They're all dachshund mixes. They're all except one from the same bloodline and family, and we have mom. And all but 3 of them came into our lives on February 24th last year because they were born in my partner's bedroom.
Oh, right, because they were a litter of 6, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess they do come in numbers, don't they?
They really do. And we just decided to keep them.
Have you spayed yet?
Yeah, everybody's spayed and neutered.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay. So remind me, I can't remember, is your partner neurodivergent?
So according to the tests, no.
Okay. So you are actually in a weird coupling.
Yeah, but he's also like, so I think people who are very, very, very highly intelligent exhibit their own types of what you like of non-normative engagement. For example, Nathan doesn't really forget anything ever. And he knows something about almost everything.
Sure.
So like you're not normally in a relationship with somebody who's basically never wrong.
I think everyone's in a relationship with someone who thinks they're never wrong.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Totally, 100%.
Yeah, no, but the problem has been that I have discovered like he's actually because he does not say that he knows something unless he actually knows it, which is so foreign to me as an ADHD person who spent so much time in my life just being like, yeah, I know that because I didn't want to look like I didn't know something because I couldn't remember it.
Totally.
My partner, when we started our relationship, they thought they were neurotypical. And for the first 5 years of our relationship, we operated under the assumption that I was ADHD and bipolar and they were normal. And it wasn't until they
grading on a curve.
They got their diagnosis as autistic that we suddenly realized, oh, we are both neurodivergent in pretty drastic ways. And it changed it. Like we had been working out ways to deal with my shit without realizing we also needed to figure out ways for me to deal with their stuff.
Right.
And that was a big turning point. But if I was journaling last night that if there was one gift I could give to Elle that would actually matter, it would be a shorter memory. Because I can go into any conflict fresh. Like this is a new thing that we have to discuss. I don't have a history for this. I don't have a list of complaints. I don't have a list of grievances to bring to the table here. I have a very short memory. I have an ADHD memory. I exist in the moment. And I feel like I can deal with a problem in the moment, but as soon as I'm hit with this backlog of data that I can't prove or disprove, I could be easily gaslit.
Totally.
And as soon as I'm hit with that, I have to shut down. I have
I'm in a similar sort of thing, and I have a memory like a steel trap. However, there are some things that you don't remember every sort of, nuance, everything you ever said, everything you've ever done. Like I might know ridiculous factoids and have like a photographic memory for things that I've read, and seen or whatever, but I don't necessarily remember everything I've ever said in person or whatnot. I might not remember, like, I might make a quip on this podcast that in 30 minutes I might not, somebody be like, "Oh, I can't believe you said that." I'm like, "What did I say?" And I think you're right, Brett. Like, it is one of those things where I'm similar to you in that even though I have a decent memory, I don't hold on to, I don't want to say grudges because I think that's too simplistic, but like I try to start fresh and I try to not let stuff linger unless it's had a real impact on me, in which case that's a sign that I should have like a deeper conversation with someone, and I try not to let it fester, right? But I run into this problem with my partner where like he will remember things very deeply, and I don't have to your point, like I don't always have a good way of knowing, okay, is this accurate or is this not? Because sometimes I'm like, I don't think this is. Like your memory of this is different than mine. And but like there's no way to prove it,
Yeah.
I've had this experience
without a list of data. Yeah.
Right. Well, I've had this experience with Nathan, and so we've been going to couples therapy, and we're going to couples therapy with my therapist.
Ooh,
and it was very funny because Nathan was like, I was worried that if we went to couples therapy with my therapist, that like my therapist would like be too hard on, or Nathan would feel like my therapist was too hard on him. But no, instead, like my therapist was like, no, like normally she's like, you're the problem here, Brian, or like it's your problem it's like your shit that's causing the problem. But a couple of things that have happened is that one of the things that I've had to learn, because my brain is so associative, as an ADHD person, like it is not, you all know this, it's not linear. It's somebody says something that makes you think of something else, which means we are having a conversation about something that I did, right? And it makes me remember the time Nathan did something kind of like it. And I want to talk about why are these two things different, or you shouldn't have done that. And I've had to learn really, really, like really deeply, we are talking about me right now.
Right.
And the problem is that I'm, again, because of the forgetfulness, I worry that if I don't bring it up now, I won't get to. And there's this feeling that, again, like I'm going to be taken advantage of, but he is, and this is the part that I've had to learn, because I think a lot of us have had the experience of being gaslit and taken advantage of a lot. And so we jump on things when they happen immediately because we don't want to lose them.
Yep.
I've had to really realize he is not everybody else in my life. He's not all of those other people that I didn't know as well who took advantage of me or hurt me, right? Like we actually have a saying that it's been this idea to like really radically reframe things so that I didn't start. And honestly, I have admitted now that like some of this came from being so obsessed with social media for me and using like Twitter so much, is that I got into the habit of responding to everything with a, but what about this? Or no, what it should, like, it was automatically adversarial the way that I would engage. And in fact, when I started not using Twitter as much, I started having more arguments with Nathan. And my therapist was like, I'm pretty sure this is because you're not fighting with people. Exactly. Yeah. And so we're actually do this thing now. I actually have on my home screen, it's a picture of Nathan and then a piece of text that I put on there using like Canva. That's just basically like, remember, Nathan is always right. And some people got very words in my life. Like, that's very scary. Why would you ever say that? Like, why would you say that your partner is always right? And I had to clarify with them that what that means
sounds like something done under duress.
Right. But like the idea here, but the problem was that I was always getting into arguments with him and then having to come back and apologize because I was wrong.
Yeah.
But because your brain makes, like, when you feel something strongly, when you feel righteous anger, you think, how could I be wrong? How could I be wrong? And we don't realize how much of an unreliable narrator our brain is.
It's super helpful to have that framing. If you go into the conversation assuming the other person is right and being willing to look at how you might be wrong, it doesn't mean you're conceding the argument. Right. You're able to take a different look at it. The one thing I've learned recently with Elle is if I can present, if I'm feeling hurt, if I'm feeling offended by something, If I can, instead of saying you offended me, if I can come at it and say, I feel offended, and then think about here's why, here's how that hit me, here's what that indicates within me, we can have a long, deep conversation. But if I come right out the gate and I'm like, you're wrong, you hurt me, you did this incorrectly, it's a totally different conversation that shuts down very quickly.
For me, with Nathan, it is that he does not have a problem. He's a scientist. And it sometimes it's very frustrating. He's a scientist. I'm not allowed to use the word research in this household because research means something very specific.
Sure. Same as theory and hypothesis. Yes.
You can just say, educate yourself, man.
Right, exactly. He's like, or do some Googling, read some articles, learn some things. But he is more than happy to admit that when he's wrong. Like, annoyingly so. Also, like, even, and it's been a combination of this plus a deep need for people to not be mad at me, and so some real codependence, that I was often confusing feeling upset or angry with the actions that I took when I was upset or angry, or how I engaged with him. Because I would watch him get upset and angry, but then also be like, I'll take your feedback, or I'll think about that. And I'd be like, but you got upset or angry. We're not supposed to do that. And my therapist, it happened in real time in one of them. She's like, no, the difference is he got upset. You could see it on his face. And then he also still responded appropriately. And the difference is you get upset and then you try to make it his fault.
Do you find a sense of relief when you do admit you're wrong?
Yeah,
because I have this instinct to argue for whatever I've stated, even if I don't fully believe it or can't fully back it up. Like, I feel this
to be wrong is to be bad,
right?
For me,
exactly. Yep. But the moment I can say, you know what, like, given this new information, given this data that I was incapable of gathering myself, I can see that I was wrong. And there's this sense of relief that comes with it to be able to say, yeah, no, I was wrong coming into this. You were right. And it just feels like smoothing out all these waves of like emotion that I had.
There was not a lot of space. And I think, Brett, you can probably relate to this. There's not a lot of space growing up for me to be wrong.
Yeah.
For me to make mistakes. And it was a combination of, I don't think my mom always tells a story about how when she started school, which was right after Brown versus Board of Education, her parents said to her, don't do anything that will make these white people think you're less than them. And she has always been an overachiever. Also, pretty certain she has ADHD. She's actually finally going to talk to her doctor about it at 71. I'm so proud of her. And I'm pretty sure she's autistic too, because this stuff runs in the family. And she was one of the, like, I learned to get over things emotionally, or at least act like I was over them. Maybe it was part of the ADHD. And then I would go to her and she would not be ready to like talk to me yet. She'd still be upset.
Ready. Yeah, she still needed to process through it.
Right. And so I was like, well, that means that I've done something bad, and so and also my parents were always very confused about how I could be so smart and still like make mistakes. And then they thought once they put me on medication that would solve everything. Because at the time, that's all they knew. And it did not. And so learning that it is like, I still struggle with being able to recognize that like making, what happens is I'm constantly trying to recover from the mistake that I've made by not making another mistake, but in the process of doing so, I keep making more mistakes.
Sure.
Because Nathan's like, stop apologizing 100 times because all you keep doing is bringing it back up. And I'm just trying to like, I'll forget about it in 30 minutes if you leave it alone.
Yeah.
And I'm over here still obsessing over it because I made a mistake. And it's the perfectionism of all of us, of trauma survivors, And
yeah, I mean, I'm wired in such a way that like when you had said to be wrong is to be bad, right?
Yep.
Like, even though I have watched people in my life fuck up over and over, and they've never almost lost me, I assume that the fuck ups pile up when we get to 4 or 5. It's over.
Yeah.
Never happened to me.
And then somebody's always hiding something, and they're not telling you all the reasons of the way that they're feeling.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
exactly. Surprise you. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh my God.
Surprise!
Oh my God, you should
thing,
read
right?
my journal for the last week. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he actually has a live journal page. You can read his journals there if you want.
Livejournal.com.
I miss my live journal.
It's all written in Russian, but
I was my handle was Flamin' Ice, and it was a picture of Emmett Honeycutt from Queer as Folk.
Yes, which is the perfect LiveJournal like show.
Yeah.
I my username would be fairly easy to figure out. Let's just I don't need to go further than that because some of the stuff might still be there. Who fucking knows?
I have a guess. I have a guess, but it sounds like you don't want us to guess.
Oh no, I mean it'd be completely obvious.
We can bleep in this thing.
I'm doing a Google right now.
Oh no, you can't Google. That's the great thing. It's not indexed.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
This was the thing.
Almost everybody on planet Earth with a computer in those years.
Well, no, that was a decision that Brad made very deliberately. It wasn't an accident. He made the decision to not index the stuff unless you purposely opted in. You had to go into your settings and opt in to be Google indexed because he understood, because he was in college when he started this thing as a way to talk with his high school friends, and then it blew into this many million user service that had to have an invite system for many years to scale, that he was like, this is shit that people aren't going to want people to find. And so by default, it's not indexed.
By today's standards, that's highly unusual, but also a smart, admirable move.
Well, that's because this is why Brad, I think he should be so much richer than he is, because he created these underpinnings for what the whole modern web runs on. And I asked him once, I was like, do you ever get mad that Mark Zuckerberg, Matt Mullenweg, all these people have David Karp, all these people have made, money essentially using a lot of the software you've built. And he's like, if it wasn't me, it would have been someone else. And A, I don't think that's necessarily true. But B, just the fact that that's his attitude is why he's one of the best people that I can call my internet friend for the last 2 decades. Well, and we've met in person too, but I've literally known him for decades, and that's why LiveJournal will always have my heart. But that's my /rant. Sorry, didn't mean to
That's cool. That's awesome. I think we should let Jeff go because I don't know what his schedule here is.
We have to let Jeff go. Well, I actually have a good bridge here to mine. LiveJournal. Back in the day, I remember I went into the Punk Planet offices one day, which was just 2 people. And Dan, who had created it, was the editor, brought me over to his computer. He's like, check this out. And a friend had given him a URL that would allow you to look at all of the LiveJournal images that have been updated in the last whatever amount of time. And so anytime you could refresh that, and you'd be looking at 40 LiveJournal images from the full spectrum of LiveJournal, right? Probably some ethical issues, but oh my God, was it the most amazing. It's like when have you ever just sat and scrolled through TikTok lives and just been like, this is all of the kinds of people, right? That's what it felt like. And I had a curated list. A curated folder of all those of my favorites of those photos that just had that same feeling of I'm looking across ways of living, and being and whatever. As I describe it, I realize it's a little problematic, but let's and if I could be challenged on that, but I don't do it anymore. This was 20 years ago, and I was fascinated by seeing the world. So I'm sorry, everybody, if it feels wrong. I'm happy to admit it. But anyway, that was also just a weird, that time of the internet thing, that something that would even exist, right?
That
you could even kind of do that. I mean, you could scrape it, obviously, but this was you could hit a URL and be like, here are the last 100 images that posted on LiveJournal.
No, which is amazing. I mean, at a certain point, that very quickly got out of scale. But yeah, it's crazy how fast things moved to the point where I remember when Twitter, I know Brett remembers this. Brian, I don't know if you do or not. And Jeff, I'm not sure about you, but I remember the first probably, year or so, there was the live feed of Twitter that you could just look at. You could literally just go to twitter.com and you would see the entire fire hose of every tweet that was being sent on the network.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Wow.
that's how I discovered, that's how I got a following. That's how I discovered like people, is I would just like randomly reply to people and you would just have random combos with people and, you know.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So only slightly related, but it is an okay bridge. This is actually a rare mental health corner where I'm just focused on something that gives me like quiet joy,
Love it.
which obviously is key with mental health. So a long time ago, I don't have a great memory. That's a theme today. But I have a lot of stories in my life that I want to remember that just make me smile. And as an example, I'll tell one in a second. But this whole thing stems out of a writing exercise I invented for myself some years ago, where I decided to focus on like, my band probably only did like 6 tours in the late 90s, but they were like really formative experiences. And things happened on those tours that I never want to forget. A lot of them are just dinner party stories anyhow, but I just don't want to forget them. So I decided I'm going to sit down every day for like 20 minutes. I'm going to write postcards from these moments, essentially, right? Like I'm going to write them short. It's going to be as if I was writing a postcard, and it's going to tell this story, just like the basic details of the story. And I have one of those right now, which I want to share. And then I want to tell you what I'm doing with them that's giving me quiet joy. So I only just remember this because I'm watching the show The Offer, which is about...
Oh, yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, it's great. It's irresistible. I mean, like there's times when you're like, oh, this isn't like the best TV show in the world, but it's freaking irresistible, especially as a fan of the movie.
Absolutely.
Like it's candy. So Colin Hanks is in that movie, which is what made me think of this. So I was at a show, and this is actually a reunion show 10 years ago, so it's not even on tour. And I'm backstage after the tour. I'm just like, after the show, I'm super sweaty. I'm sitting on a chair. My friend brings down this guy and goes, "Hey everybody, this is my friend Colin." And he looks at me, and my friend looks at me and says, "You guys are Colin's new favorite band." And I look at Colin, who I do not recognize, and I say, "Come sit in my lap." and so he comes over, sits in my lap. A photo's taken that I never got. He gets up, whatever, the night goes on. I find out the next day it's Colin Hanks. And
amazing.
I'm like, you know how those things are? It's like, you kind of can't ask for the photo. Like, his friend took the photo, and probably his friend would feel weird about giving, even though that friend was my friend. I never asked for the photo. Didn't want to seem too needy. And so I don't have it. Okay. So when you don't have an image of a thing, right? Like, it's kind of, one thing that I've experienced with trauma, and we probably all have, is that traumatic incidents can exist as frozen photographs, essentially frozen moments that won't unfreeze for no matter how hard you try or wish them to, which is where therapy obviously comes in. Definitely for me, where EMDR comes in. My cat's complaining. I wanted to create, so I decided I'm going to plug these little postcard stories into DALL-E, and have it create just completely fucked up fake memory images of these moments. So I'd be like, create me a postcard image of this thing. Now, in this case, the best it could do was give me a picture of Tom Hanks sitting in Tom Hanks's lap. Which, no matter how hard I tried,
I love this so
that's
much.
all I would get. But that was great. But I've been putting them in, and it shoots back these pictures that are so wrong. And something about engaging with the story itself, and then almost cartoonizing them, because they are stories I love. I'm not putting hard stories in there, right?
Right.
It's just like, it's been a way to connect with moments in my life that I love, or even in this case, I'm kind of proud of. I'm proud that my reaction was, "Come sit in my lap."
I am
right?
too.
And I love that Colin Hanks sat in my sweaty ass lap,
and you
without
weren't even
hesitation.
Drunk.
You weren't even drunk, but also
I know you weren't drunk.
No one was drunk.
also, like you like your band was like Colin Hanks's favorite band. Like, what the fuck?
That night, yeah, I'll take it.
That's amazing.
So another one I did that was just so delightful is like, I started plugging in dreams. So I've had nightmare problems forever, but I also have the most delightful, absurd dreams. And there was a dream once where I was driving a blue Cadillac convertible in an orange jumpsuit, not like a prisoner jumpsuit, but like a 70s fly jumpsuit. And I crashed through the fence of a monkey farm. And the monkeys were so excited to meet me. So I decided to put this in. And the thing that was hilarious is that I had to keep reprompting with this one prompt: make the monkeys even more happy to see me. But anyhow, this was like, I said, kind of like these are quiet moments of joy. They're these great things where it's like these small little joy torpedoes, and they just happen with me quietly with my laptop on my couch, and these little memories. And it's so much, it's so interesting because like I feel like the way we share these things over time is obviously with people. And the older you get, the more the people in your life have already heard those fucking stories, right? And so, but you still want to interact with those stories. They're memories that like do something for you, right? And so this has just been an amazing way to just interact with the parts of my life that delight me, and have it just be me, and but still have something reflect it back at me, just like someone reacting to your story, you know. So that's been really nice for me, and what has been like you, Bryan, just a tough ass work week or couple of weeks. But.
I think I have two questions, and they're actually for Jeff. First, have you seen Life in Pieces?
No.
Oh, amazing show with Colin Hanks. Awesome. Second, have you seen the meme where they ask Dali to make John baptizing Jesus but happier? And they have these two white guys in a river and robes just yucking it up, just laughing and dunking each other. And they are very white. Notably, John and Jesus are both very white in Dali's recreation of
course,
John baptizing Jesus.
Although something crazy happened totally against their racist algorithm, which is that the very first thing I put in was this story where we were playing in Houston, and at the beginning of the show, I hate Houston. I mean, I don't hate it in a kind of way that I'm damning a city, but I never liked playing Houston. We were on this label, Amphetamine Reptile Records, and it was just meatheads that came out to those shows, basically, right? Like we weren't really, it wasn't our thing, but like whatever. So this is like when you go to Texas on that label, you really can get a lot of meatheads. So no offense, Texas, but if you're a fan and you went to an AMREP band show, you know it's true. So anyway, beginning of the show, I'm already feeling angsty. There's a street sign behind me, you know how they used to decorate the clubs back in the day. I reach back with my sticks to do some big like crashing thing, and I slice my finger open on the sign, and I'm bleeding everywhere. I was a little bit known for always bleeding. I was like Gigi Allen, but I didn't mean to be bleeding. And so I was always like my drum heads had blood on them, my sticks, but I was really bleeding. And by the end of the show, I was just, I don't know, it was like in a young person angsty moment where like I didn't even like playing for these people, and I didn't like how they looked at me, and I just didn't like it, right? And so at the end of the show, as my two bandmates were just making noise, I got onto a road case I had that had wheels, and I surfed through the crowd throwing my bloody sticks kind of hard, like in a way that I don't feel good about now. And as soon as the show was over and the lights came up, and all of a sudden the magic's over, right? You can't be in that character anymore. I realized like I'd just thrown the last of my sticks and I had no money. And so I started looking around for the sticks, and I see 3 of them next to a dude whose back is to me at the bar, who is a very big, strong man. And I don't know if he kept those as evidence of someone almost hurting people or what, but I go over and I tap him on the shoulder. These are desperate times. And I go, hi, excuse me, those are my drumsticks. Is there any chance I could get them back? And he turns around, looks at me and goes, you guys were fucking awesome. So I plug a version of this into the thing, and it makes me a black drummer with blood dripping off my hands, albeit, but like, I was like, whoa, like I normally actually will just say, as is my habit anyhow, if I'm describing myself to people that don't know me, I'm like a 6'4" white guy. Cause right, like white people don't do that. They're just like, oh, I'm wearing a striped shirt. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess this is a test. I'm assuming you're white. Like it's a fucked up test of your brain if you're a white person, right? Like I'm probably like all around. But I was like,
it was trained on death and bad brains. So what are you going to get?
Yeah. It was the first time I ever tried it. And I was like, they made me a black drummer. And then I had to write the really funny sentence of like, yes, but I'm white. Cause like, it's like, okay, I love this, but it's like, I feel a little weird holding it. Anyway, that's
great. That's amazing. That's so
good. Mine can tie into multiple themes. Do you mind if I go next, Christina?
No, please.
So I back in, I don't even remember what year, but about 10 years ago, I lost a couple terabytes of photos and history. Fuck you, Drobo.
For fucking real. Fuck
what'd you call me?
And it like just gone because I had trusted a backup system that was not to be trusted. So what I have left from those years exists in what I did upload to Flickr, what I did post to my blog, what I did make available online, because I had no local copies of these memories left. And I was going through old YouTube videos today, and I found one. It's a company called Pummel Vision. It was an app that is gone now. If you try to go to their site, you get like a weird Apache error message. Or Nginx, whatever. It's gone now. But what it does is take all of your, I think it was from Flickr, and it takes all of your photos and puts them up like 2 photos per second in this barrage of years worth of photos in like 2 minutes. And
that sounds dizzying.
Yeah, it pummels you with these memories. And it was crazy because I had completely forgotten about all of this, because it makes me realize exactly how bad my memory is. If I don't have photographs, if I don't have photographic evidence or a blog post that something happened, then it may as well have never happened as far as I'm concerned. Which is why I'm pretty religious about taking photos and backing them up and uploading to Flickr and blogging about things I learned, because I will forget a year later. I will search for the solution to a problem, find my own blog, and realize I have already solved this. I have already done this. And this happens to me, I want to say, infrequently, but it's like once a month. I find out I've already solved the problem and I've blogged about it, and other people have linked to it, and I had forgotten about it. But this Pummel Vision, and then looking back through old Flickr photos and like realizing that segment of my life, it was about a 2-year span that I had thought I had no memory of, but I did actually have online traces of. And honestly, it makes me really thankful for things like Flickr, for things like LiveJournal, if LiveJournal were backed up, things like my blog, for things, these external, we'll say cloud-based versions of our life, that they're curated. They're what we want to remember. They're not necessarily indicative of reality or what really happened, but they are the things that for ADHD people, we would forget. We would not, like, they would be lost to time were it not for these services. And that has made me, it's been a fascinating journey. And actually, after watching that Pummel Vision, I reconnected with a couple of friends that I had forgotten even existed. And I'm like, oh my God, I actually had like a real connection with this person at one time. They were important to me. We took them into our home. We gave them shelter when things were bad, and I had forgotten about them entirely. And it made me reach out and reconnect. And that was, I don't know, man. It makes me realize how bad my memory really is. But the other meaningful thing, I found an IFS therapist. I have my first meeting with them.
Family systems.
Correct. I have my first meeting with them on Tuesday. It's just a 15-minute, like, let's find out about each other and see if we want to do this thing. But I might get to move forward with IFS, which I've decided, even though I'm super skeptical about the whole thing. Like, I've read the books, and I really think if there's a way through CPTSD for me, it's going to be through IFS. So I am excited to have finally gotten off a wait list and gotten in to see somebody. But the most meaningful thing I learned in the last week was, so anyone who's grown up in an evangelical or Baptist type of setting has experienced the idea of witnessing, where you are expected to share the message of Jesus Christ with your friends. And in your daily life, you're expected to convert your friends. And this leads to alienation. This leads to arguments, and rarely does it lead to anyone coming to join your church. And it was always this thing that I felt super embarrassed to do, but like I felt this compulsion, like this like requirement that I do this if I were going to be part of the church. And what I learned was that this is actually a technique used in psychological manipulation where you send somebody out to be specifically rejected by the out group so that they can return to the in group and be lauded and comforted and told you did great. They are others. It further others the out group and makes you feel connected to the in group. And it gives you this sense that everything outside is dangerous. Um, and this was absolutely the case for me. And it was the basic like tenets that I was taught of like questioning reality, of loving unconditionally, of accepting strangers that weren't truly practiced by the church. But those concepts, when applied about the church, actually got me out of the church and moved me on to like a better place in my life. So like they taught me some good things. But this idea that witnessing was psychological manipulation of the parishioner, not of the outer, sources. That was actually it was fascinating to me and helped me put a lot of that in perspective.
That's cool.
That makes a lot of sense.
I would love to talk to you like on a different venue sometime about like how you got like what the catalyst was, because you just talked about it a little bit, but like what the catalyst was for you like stopping being a believer, like what got you questioning your faith and like moving away from the church, because you did that as a teenager, and then like had a pretty radically different life from like what you'd been raised and kind of expected to have, and it seems like it happened pretty quickly. I'd love to
well,
but
I can summarize it. Like basically I enough people contradicted the things I was told to tell them.
Right.
And eventually I was like, wait, so the majority of the world believes evolution is real.
Right.
Can the majority of the world actually be wrong? Which led me to do my own independent research.
Got it.
And decide, holy shit, no, there's so much evidence for this thing that my church eschews that I think my church might be wrong. And that led to more and more questioning and more kind of deconverting. Like they didn't call it that then.
Right.
This is back in like 92 through 96 that I kind of went through this deconversion process, but just like led to question things in a way that I had been taught to question everything the world told me.
Okay.
But I redirected it and questioned the church.
Okay, well, see, that makes more sense then. That you were taught to question things, but you were taught to question the outside world, not anything else.
I was taught that there was this core, simple truth, and anything that disagreed with it had to be questioned.
Got it. So it's so interesting to me talking with people who, their religion changes or how they, deal with faith or anything like that changes. Because I think for most of us, it does usually follow a pattern where it's usually we're teenagers and we have these kind of moments of reflection. We're like, okay, this thing that I was taught, this thing I was told is not true or doesn't feel true to me anymore. And now I'm having to question my entire belief system and like reevaluate that. For me, it's a little bit different because I didn't have the same, I was raised religious, but not in a way where like the outside world is lying to you and this is the only way to be. Like, I think that I have to be honest, like all things considered fairly healthy in terms of like, because my mom is a very religious person and it's a very pure thing and it's a very real thing to her. But it's not like a thing where there's judgment on others. It's a very personal thing to her. And so my faith was always very personal to me. And then it was a personal thing where I was like, I started questioning stuff and I went, okay, I have questions about, some of the historical accuracies and whatnot because of the data and the proof that's there where I can go, oh, I know that these books weren't written or were changed and how these things were translated is fucked up. But the bigger thing for me was putting that aside was like, I'm not getting out of this what I'm supposed to be. This is supposed to be offering me comfort and it's not. and then that led to like a much larger existential crisis. But I digress. But like but the reason I like ask though is just because I think it is so interesting that we have like a nation really of a lot of people who were raised up to a certain point to have one belief system, and then we're changed. But even when we change our belief system, we can't escape, you know, that like formative stuff, and it's fucked. Like I think that I don't want to be a person who is like unilaterally shitting on religion, because I think for a lot of people it does offer a lot of good, and I think that there's value in that, even if it's not something that I get from an organized, structured thing. But I do think that we as a society don't investigate enough how much damage is done by these groups.
Have I already talked about this concept of God's love before?
I don't think so.
This just struck
good
me.
News.
This just struck me in the last month or so, that I would hear. There's this song by Joseph Arthur. I'm forgetting the name of it now, but there's this line that's repeated: "May God's love be with you."
In the Sun.
And the song, "In the Sun," yes, "In the Sun" by Joseph Arthur. And I listened to it, and when he sings it, I remember that feeling I used to get when I was part of the church of being loved by God before it became nothing but judgmental, before it began feeling like I was going to hell, that who I was going to send me to hell. This feeling of this all-encompassing, it's just love, right? And you attribute it to whatever deity you were taught to attribute it to, but I think it's a feeling that any human can experience in any context.
Totally.
And I think it's a feeling for those of us who had to force ourselves out of religion, who had to literally pry ourselves out of it. And we developed this idea that all religion is bad, and that like the entire concept of a God is
wrong.
Detrimental. And we can no longer access this feeling because it feels like it's related to religion. It feels like something religious people feel. But I honestly, like in exploring this, realized that this feeling is possible to feel, and you can attribute it to whatever higher power you want to. You can attribute it to the universe, to universal energy, to God, to Allah, wherever you are most comfortable feeling this feeling emanating from. And for me, it's not attributed to any higher power, but I am able to access that feeling of just being loved. And I think that feeling, for like the religion that you're describing, Christina, I feel like that's a bigger part of it.
Yeah.
People have this faith because it's about love. It's about feeling cared for, and about just feeling accepted and part of. And I think that's true I think it's true for evangelicals, but they mix it with this also eternal damnation idea.
They mix it with these other things, with this judgment, like this thing that's actually the opposite,
exactly.
This thing that's the opposite of it in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly. To 100% opposite.
Like genuinely. And so I'm downloading this now. I'm gonna like send it to you. There was an EP. It's no longer available to purchase. This is why I have. Well, A, I wouldn't care about pirating it anyway. But B, but there was a thing for Hurricane. Actually, it might not even been. I don't remember if it was Hurricane Katrina or not. But they did Joseph Arthur did like a EP where he did versions of In the Sun with Michael Stipe and
I have. And it's on YouTube.
Yeah,
it's on YouTube. I've seen
it. I have it purchased. So
there are multiple versions.
Yes, there are,
with Michael Stipe doing In the Sun. Like, I didn't realize there was a connection. I discovered Joseph Arthur because a friend of mine was in NA with him.
Oh,
in
wow.
New York City.
So I discovered him.
Like, you should check out this guy. He's been playing shows here locally, and he just put out an album.
I discovered him, I think because In the Sun or something like that was featured on Dawson's Creek. I'm almost 90%
also
positive.
That song was in the movie Saved. If you've ever seen Saved,
which is a great movie,
a great kind of farce about
Broadway
religion
version of Saved.
Oh, Saved is Saved is so good. Jenna Malone
My friend was
deserved a
in
better
that.
career.
Let me add
Truly.
Save to our show notes before I forget.
But Jenna Malone really,
Also,
she
can we just
almost
talk
broke
about
through.
the Culkin boys briefly?
I love them so much, and I'm so happy for Kieran. Like that,
Yeah.
I like honestly.
And I mean, I grew up with like Macaulay Culkin and I are near the same age, so like, crushing on Macaulay Culkin, Jonathan Brandis, like,
yes,
these are my boy crushes.
Yeah, Devon Sawa. I never liked Jonathan Taylor Thomas. I always thought I never liked him.
I liked you know who I liked instead was his younger brother.
Oh,
who
Tara
ended up
Noah
being
Smith.
really tall and gothy.
Yeah,
exactly,
Tara Noah Smith. I know all their names because of course I do, because I was like, I was an elementary school girl in the 90s.
One thing I didn't talk about, I want to share with you guys, is that I grew up in the church actually as well, because my mom, to this day is still very involved with the United Church of Christ, which is like the good church, right? The one that ordained women and queer people early, and
Episcopals represent. That's where I'm from, so I got you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Episcopals are like the Catholic light version of the United Church of Christ, like the good version,
Right.
The UCC is like as left as you get before you hit the Unitarian Universalists, who are like anyone. This week
today we read from the Gospel of Steinbeck.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. And so I had the experience of thinking that everybody, like all Christians, were cool with like queer people and
I had
everything.
The same problem.
And then I had a crush on a boy in high school who turned out like to be. He's like, I'm Christian, and he's like, you're gay, and I don't understand the problem.
Right.
But part of this is that so what's interesting about this is there weren't like a separate set of Christian musicians that we listened to that were mainstream, because that didn't really exist. So like when I went to church camp, which I did for several years, we would listen to like Michael W. Smith.
Oh yeah. He did break through a little bit. He and Amy Grant, there were a few of them who kind of like broke through.
Remember Petra?
Petra was great. Petra was great.
Lots of breaking through back then. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I just remember like, I had this experience of this journey. Like, so my connection to Christianity has always very much been about the music.
Totally.
So much about the music, and it has been a very interesting journey as I've continued to grow older, of like finding out that every single like Christian artist that you liked like does not like you.
Right.
Yeah. And but also still deeply like the music is so good.
Many times
I love the music.
Well, that's the thing. Like worship bands,
catchy.
Well, it depends, because like there was like Mute Math, like there was like this whole thing of like rock, like Christian type rock bands. Like Swiftfoot, I think, is an amazing band, and some of these bands like then like later like had changed their thing to be like, oh, we're more secular or whatnot, but like they started out as Christian.
They went where the money was.
Well,
Christian rock had a huge, like, that was profitable for people. Like Striper is a good example.
Totally.
Following the money.
Man, they were following their own metal god.
What I mean is actually more the inverse, where these were bands that like got a following and then started to actually be played on mainstream, where mainstream didn't realize that they were Christian, and then they decided they wanted to promote themselves more as secular, like Evanescence.
And I guess what I want to call out is just that like worship music is some of my favorite music out there.
Oh, I agree.
Like
I listen to a lot of
chord progressions.
Yes.
Yeah, and the experience of the other part is it's the experience of singing with other people.
It's very manipulative.
That is just so. Well,
if you want to convince someone they're having a spiritual experience, sit them through three or four like praise songs with a live band, and then hit them with this like, do you feel what you're feeling right now is because of our Lord and Savior Jesus, and they'll buy it because it puts you in a mindset. And what I want to say about that is,
right, and see, what's weird is it's so interesting. They are having a spiritual experience, but it's not about any like particular God or anything. It's about the incredible biological things that happen when you are in sync with other people and you're singing with them.
Yeah.
Like that's
a lot of human development is like there are theories that tribal gatherings that involve music. That music was a major
music.
part.
Same.
Yeah. There's a major component of human development that is based around the social construction of sharing music.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
And participating, not just sitting and listening, but participating.
Yeah, well, participating.
Yes. No, I was just gonna say, like, I grew up in an Episcopal church, so our music, like, I would listen sometimes to worship music. My mom car, my aunt and whatnot, but it wasn't like we had that in church because Catholic light. But like, it definitely is manipulative. But I think the reason you have like Hillsong and like these like worship bands and things like that, you're not wrong that it can be manipulative and whatnot. But there's also, I don't think we can discount the fact that for thousands and thousands of years, like that's how people have been able to connect and share themselves.
No, there's a real power to it.
Yeah.
I just, I don't like it when it's used, when it's attributed to something that isn't responsible for it. Like the music is powerful. The connection of sharing music is powerful. And I think if we say that, it's awesome. I think that's that kind of God loves feeling that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That feeling you get from sharing that experience with other people. That is powerful in and of itself and doesn't need to be who else here memorized DC Talk lyrics at the same time they memorized Vanilla Ice lyrics?
Oh, what if you memorized neither?
I memorized I memorized the same type of thing, but I was not a DC. I was not a rock kid, except like I was R&B rock. I was Michael Jackson rock,
Right.
But I memorized all of the Michael W. Smith songs, like lyrics, right along memorizing like "Beat It" and New Kids on the Block lyrics. Like, absolutely, I'm with you.
DC Talk was the one group that had a black person in Christian rock at that time, and I thought they must be legit because they had. I love how
this thing happened to you, right? Through all of like and I don't know what your parents like views on race are. But it is fascinating. Okay, it's separatist. Okay. So the fact that you are such a that like even at that age you were like DC Talk, and they have a black person, they must be legit. Like it
was a rebellion of sorts.
Well, that's fine, but like there's a lot of people that don't do the rebellion, right? And it's fascinating that you did, that you found your way through that way, because there's still so many people. Yeah.
Have you guys ever heard of Cornerstone?
Yeah, I was in yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's a Christian rock music
Hi, Danny
festival.
Glamour.
Yeah. It's a Christian rock.
Danny Glamour festival. Literally possibly just shut the radio off. He was deep in that world.
Yeah. It was the first time I heard Christian death metal. Was at Cornerstone, and that was
even actually Christians die.
It was a turning point for me where I was like, when I realized that Christians in this particular industry, were basically stealing music that was popular elsewhere and then attributing, like forcing God into it.
Yep.
And it made me realize maybe I would just like the pure version of this music.
But is it stealing and forcing? That seems ungenerous. What about just being a link in the chain and just feeling like I want to do that, but I have to do it, or I want to do it in this context?
Okay, we aspire different motives to it, because in my mind, it's very, very much a decision. And there was money at that point in selling Christian music. There was like a captive audience of people.
Well, Cornerstone had a label
who would only buy things because it was Christian, and you could sell them anything as long as it was Christian.
There are certain people that, I think, to Brett's or to Jeff's point, there are certain people who had that mindset that you're talking about, Brett. A lot of the actual individuals and artists did not. This is what they were told they had to do.
Yes. And in fact,
both existed.
Yeah. And in fact, many of them, like, I think had kind of like it's like, okay, who's going to sign us? Like, what can we do? And then you would see like bands like break beyond that sort of thing, right? To be like, no, this isn't what we care about. Like, do other things. And then you do have artists like to this day, like Sufjan Stevens, who is a very like faith-based like musician, and like his early stuff especially was very like the only way you can read the text, like he's very explicit about like the Christianity behind it. But I mean, he's gay, and he's one of like the best indie musicians out there. Like there are layers of things, but if anything, like it hurt his probably career to be so to this day, like he still has to kind of fight like the whole like, oh, I'm a Christian artist thing. And he's like, I don't want to talk about my faith when I'm talking about my album, just because it is an inherent part of who I am, but it is not, you know, part and parcel for everything else. But you know, to your point, like when the labels realized that there was a way you could make a shitload of money off these captive audiences, they're going to make the money, but the bands don't always have a choice.
Some of those people were Christian labels too, who like were absolutely doing the same sort of prosperity gospel.
Oh, of course, even worse.
That those big church leaders were doing as well.
Right? Arguably,
I have an edge case.
All times. Yeah.
I have an edge case, Brett. You're going to love this. So, first of all, I want to say that Danny Glamour, friend of the show, may or may not have a partner, also a dear friend, who drove Striper around on a golf course, on a golf cart at the Cornerstone Music Festival. May or may not have that experience in his home. And the other weird thing is that I for just a minute, I was a drummer in a band on the Cornerstone label that always played the Cornerstone Festival.
Okay.
Because Cornerstone was organized by this organization called Jesus People USA. And Jesus People USA was like the Black Panthers of evangelical Christians. They had a label, they had a magazine, they had, right? Like they fed kids, like the whole thing. But all of my friends that were there left. I mean, they left in a pretty serious wave. But one of the things that helped me to be in this band was that their albums had all been recorded by Steve Albini. And I thought, wow. I mean, I love the people in this band, but I was like, if I'm in this band and we make a record, I get to record with Steve Albini. So there's a bizarre like clashing of, and Steve Albini's partner.
That is the weirdest sentence I've heard in a while.
Steve Albini's partner then went on to make a sort of expose documentary on Jesus People USA. It's just like, I just wanted to throw that in, but I also want to mention that Christina, you're up.
Oh yeah.
For real.
For real. No. So, I think probably the most pressing thing that has had an impact on my mental health corner since we talked last, because there hasn't been a lot of changes. I did try my husband's Provigil like for 2 days this week, and I think that when I talk to my shrink like next week, I think, or 2 weeks, I'm going to bring it up to him. But that might be like a good combo for things. But my week was pretty good in terms of trying to get my ADHD stuff on track. I had a lot of work meetings, which seems to be a similar theme across all of us. But the thing that, and it's embarrassing for me to say this, but it's not, because fuck it, this is our show. This had like the biggest impact on my mental health, genuinely, is that I can finally use my Twitter account again after 2.5 months.
Oh my God.
And I can't get into the details of how, but basically favors were asked. I'm very grateful for some people who have a way to reach humans there, because again, like I didn't do anything wrong. This has been the most frustrating part about this, is that most people in my life have taken the default assumption that I had to have done something wrong for me to be locked out of the account the way that I was locked out of it. And I didn't. I literally didn't do anything wrong. It was some sort of like a tech snafu thing. And then because this is a company that is run by a megalomaniac that has very few staffers, in place, like you can't reach a human being. And it was just like a problem. And the thing is that I am probably going to spend, not even probably, I am going to spend less time on Twitter. I'd already been spending less time there even before I was locked out of my account on November 7th. But like, I want to do it on my own terms. Having your account show that you might have violated rules, which leads people to think, oh, well, what the fuck did she say? Which never in 16 years of using the service have I ever even received like a warning, let alone violated rule. Like I don't do that. You know what I mean? So then that gets people thinking shit that isn't true. And then, you have people DMing you because they don't know, what's happening, and you can see the DMs, but you can't respond to them, and you don't have any other way of contacting them, which is awkward. And then you have people who are, like, again, like sending me, messages other ways. It was making it very difficult for me to do parts of my job. And also, again, like it's a cautionary reminder for all of us. I think that like we don't control these platforms, we don't control these followings, and these things can be taken away from us. And I always knew that, and it wasn't like I was unaware of that. But when you experience that, I think it makes you like, at least makes me think doubly hard about, okay, how much do you want to invest on some of these things without having any sort of backup plan? And certainly I could have continued my life without ever having a Twitter account again, but I'm incredibly relieved that I have access to it again. I'm already more productive, which I know sounds fucked up, but again, like things that I do with my job, because people see me as one of the main contact forces for the company that I work at. And that means that people will at me and things, or they will try to DM me, and then I have no way of responding. Now I can solve people's problems. I can like actually do work. And that's just been like the biggest relief off of my chest, because I've had like just this, in addition to the normal anxiety that I feel all the time, I've had like this additional sense of dread and whatnot of like, I genuinely did nothing wrong. I could not reach a human being to get this, rectified. This was like just like a bad situation, and I'm, never changing my display name again, ever, like never like making any, gonna try to make as most minimal changes to, the thing as possible. But like, fuck, I it sounds dumb, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who in their mind are
Doesn't
like,
sound dumb.
well, and I appreciate you saying that, because you actually were one of the few people who really understood that, Jeff, and even commented, but how are you doing with this? This has to be like a big thing for you. Because a lot of people, their flippant reaction, and I get it, if you don't think it through all of its logical things and how people can use tools differently than you use these tools, they can go, well, it's not that big of a deal, you shouldn't be on it anyway, and good riddance and this and that. And it's like, okay, again, if I make that choice myself and I do it on my own terms, that's one thing. When that decision is made for me, and I don't have any way of even having a goodbye message or even telling people, follow me these places, I can't even pin something, that's completely different.
And that's the key right there, is like, people who have left Twitter, more power to them. They're looking out for their own mental health,
which I totally appreciate. Yeah,
sure. And we could do a whole episode on Twitter and mental health, or Facebook and mental health, like social media and mental health. But to have a communication platform that you depend on in any way taken away from you, is an inverse effect on mental health.
100%.
That has the absolute opposite reaction.
No,
than
totally.
choosing to leave something.
Than choosing to leave.
I hear you.
And I think, and then for me, like, I mean, and so, okay, look, is this tied up in ego? Sure, but it is what it is. Like, I'm aware enough.
It's where we all live,
right? Well,
I don't think it is tied up in ego.
It's like losing your passport.
Well, I was going to say it kind of is that, but I was going to say this aspect, like what I've had to kind of realize in some certain regards is like, okay, like I owe a lot of my quote unquote success to the personalities and the things I've built up online. And when you lose access to that lever, even when that lever has been weakened over time, and even when people leave and whatnot, that's a loss too, that you then have to like go through a lot of like, me anyway, I have to go through like a lot of like internal things, like, well, who am I? Like, do I matter without having, this thing? Like, because, will people still want to talk to me or reach out to me if I don't have this platform that they see as maybe being more important than it is? Like, I might know how unimportant it is and how like my reach is not what they think it is, but that gives people a certain sense of who I am. What am I without that? And how do I exist without that? Right? Like, so, and that's the ego part a little bit. And that's okay to have, again, like those conversations. And I've certainly had to kind of grapple with like the waning influence, as it were, which is fine. But again, to what you were saying, like, Brett, agreeing with me, like, do it on your own terms. When it's taken away from you, it's like, it is a negative mental health thing. And so,
it's a significant and severe loss of control. And also ego. I want to take a moment to reframe that word, which is that it is important to have a healthy ego as a person. Like, you need to have a level of self-actualization and self-worth and self-understanding. People often think, well, these ideas of like, will I matter, or do I make a difference, or how do people see me, that these are somehow like, I mean, it goes back to all of the bullshit of the specific of evangelical fundamentalist Christianity, the idea of we need to completely be devoid of the self. But because then you're not a functional human being. So, worrying about those things, understanding who you are, understanding whether you matter, that's why we do things. Like, we do things because we want to matter. We want to be seen. We want to be seen so that we know we exist. One thing that I think about so much, especially as I've thought a lot about the experiences of what my identity creation has been, as I have sort of pulled those away and thought about them, is how often we are forced to place our identities in the hands of others, because so much of what we think about ourselves comes from how other people see us, because we don't see ourselves. It's just not a thing that we do regularly, and so, and we are perceived by others far more than we perceive ourselves. And so we think about ourselves in the context of what others tell us about ourselves. And I think one of the hardest things to do, and one of the things that I am most impressed by people who have figured out how to do it, is mainly because it is very antithetical to, I think, being a person in the world today, is people with very strong senses of self that don't get rocked by external things that affect the way others see them, because it's not, like, in some ways it's not normal.
Yeah.
Because that's how society is built, right? Like,
I was going to say, who are these people you're describing?
My partner is one of them. It's very weird, but I think he had to go through a pretty rough separation and divorce to figure some of that stuff out. But I mean, we don't. Our society is literally founded on the idea that you should care what other people think about you, because that's how you build a community.
Right.
And there are good things and bad things about that, and the internet has, to some degree, taken it to an nth degree, and we weren't prepared for it, and now we're trying to figure out how do we integrate that, because it's not going back in the bottle.
Right.
Oh God, no! The bottle just gets bigger, at least. That didn't make any sense, but you get what I'm saying.
You totally do.
Yep, absolutely. Even if we put it in the bottle just keeps expanding. It's like a bag of holding, or the TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside.
Nerd.
Oh, absolutely.
Nerd.
Are we officially a 2-hour podcast now?
I was just gonna say, so whoever's coming next, we don't know yet, but like the next person that comes on and we don't go 2 hours, it's gonna be awkward, but it's not gonna be their fault.
Season 4,
their fault.
Season 4, year 2024 has been like the year of like the 2-hour Overtired podcast, which honestly does feel like it's kind of 2 podcasts melded into one, but I kind of dig it.
And it totally tracks with the fact that we've had a guest intentionally every episode since the year or the season started. Which I love.
Yeah, I've loved it too. I think Bryan and I both agree that maybe if we're gonna do a 2-hour podcast, we should have an intentional bathroom break at like the 1 hour mark. Like just 5 minutes to walk around, do your thing, make a cup of coffee,
your head
come back
straight. Yeah, because definitely
2 hours,
half of this episode. Yeah,
2 hours straight with ADHD is rough.
Well, and I think one of the things that the 2 hour fit does it a little better, actually, I think, for Overtired to some degree, is that most of us at different points in the podcast are off busy being ADHD. And so we can do that, and you don't feel like previously. Sometimes I felt like we didn't get as deep as I wanted to, because I was off in the mist for 30 minutes,
right?
On my own.
Yeah. Totally. I get that.
All right. Well, I think
anyone who hung to the end, we see you.
Yeah,
you definitely see us.
We'll call it there. We love you all, and you guys get some sleep.
Get some sleep.
The system is going down low.